In 1974, the first tabletop role-playing game was created. Since then, people from all around have gathered to play. Join me as we talk with RPG enthusiasts while they share their best, worst, and favorite moments. This is You Had to Be There.
Hey everyone, welcome to You Had to Be There, a D&D storytelling podcast with me, Tom DeSillis. I am so excited today because I have my first return guest ever. It's the first one. Welcome everybody, one of my favorite professional game masters, keepers, dungeon masters, involved in so many projects. Give it up if you haven't heard him before. If you haven't heard me drop his name before, you haven't listened to the show. Jacob Cordas, everybody. What's up, dude?
Yeah, not much. Happy to be here, man. How you doing?
I'm good. It's fun. You were back in the I guess it was like almost a year ago now, or a little bit more than a year ago. You were like one of the second people to email me and just be like, "Hey, I want to do an episode." And it's how we make friends in the world of tabletop role playing games. You've been
100%.
You've been busy. You've been doing a lot of cool stuff. How's the professional DM or GM or keeper game been going for you? Pretty well, right?
Yeah, it's been going all right. I'm running a bunch of games. I think I run about like 13 games a week right now, and
Ooh.
I am about to hit 500 games run on start playing next week.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, all these games you play, so those are all paid games, right? Those are all paying gigs for you. Now, do you have any sort of separation at this time where you're playing something either as a player or with friends, or are you all, if you want me to talk, buddy, you got to pay up, kind of?
I play in a game on Tuesday mornings. That's a friend's game.
That's good.
They run a Monster of the Week game, and that's a blast playing in that. And my like podcast isn't. Which is a little different, but outside of that, not especially. There's just not enough time, to be honest. I run so many games that the idea of that half the idea of doing one of the like another D&D game in my free time as a DM, I'm just like, no, I'm good.
And I think for you, being a player probably makes the most sense. I just feel like you got to be. I can imagine that you got to be kind of careful doing this, because if it becomes too much worky work as opposed to fun, then like it might burn you out. But it's good to probably still be able to kind of chill and just roll the dice as a character and play some stuff. That's nice.
Yeah, it's really, really nice. It's really relaxing being able to do that. It's a lot of weight off my back.
Yeah.
Comparatively, like it's really nice.
Yeah, just chilling. And then like what how many systems are you running now in all of your games?
So I'm starting up a couple new games because there's just a couple like holes in my schedule I'm trying to get filled up.
Sure.
Right now I'm trying to get Spirit of 77, which is a Powered by the Apocalypse game where you play like exploitation heroes, like a grindhousey kind of game. Duckborg, which is a variant off of Morkborg, which is an amazing game, but instead of Morkborg, it's Grimdark DuckTales. Of course, a lot of D&D. I run a Pokemon tabletop game that's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Trying to think what else. Mondays are D&D, Tuesdays are D&D. I feel like there's something I'm missing.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm running a Doctor Who right now.
Yeah,
I'm just finishing up. I'm on the final session of I'm doing a full season Doctor Who, so it's 10 episodes and then a Christmas special.
And you always got to end it on the Christmas special. Hell yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've been rewatching a lot of Doctor Who just like to get ready for the new Doctor, and I love it so much. It's such a good show.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
You got to check out the game. The game's amazing.
One day. I much like you, a very, very busy person, but one shots are, if it's not my every other Monday and one monthly game, it's got to be a one shot, and it's got to be, you got to let me know in advance and I'll be there. But one day I see your messages, and one day I'll try and hop on with one of the many games you're doing. I saw like the Vecna one looked so cool, but of course that would fill up like instantly. Everyone's like, yeah, Stranger Things, we gotta fight Vecna. The Pokemon one, what kind of a system is the Pokemon one? How does that play out?
Pokemon's based off the fan system that poker that you can find on pokeroll.com, I believe is the website. So it's a D6 dice pool system. So everything in the game is like you add a skill and an attribute, you roll that many D6s.
You get more D6s, like D6 Chronicles of Darkness, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I like that. It's a very easy system to pick up, I feel like. Because you look at the sheet and you're like, you get a D6. If you got a little dot there, add another D6. You know, it's like very, I like those types of systems where it's like one type of dice and just a lot of them. It makes it super easy to like jump in and stuff.
I ran a little while back. I finally ran, I do like a monthly game where I do a different one shot with a different system every single month.
Cool.
And I had one with Coyote and Crow, which is dice pools, but with D12s. And it's set up in such a cool way where it's staggered so that the better you are at something, the more like you almost exclusively will only critically succeed or critically fail. You'll almost never get a regular success if you're good at something. If you're really good at something, if it's like the thing you picked. Gotcha. You'll always either be, the way the game's weighted, you will always either critically succeed doing the most amazing possible version of it.
Yeah.
My players were able to crit succeed their way into holding hands and singing Kumbaya on a mountaintop to save the day. Like, that is how they won.
What?
Which is just so delightful that you can win a game through just, like, holding hands and singing on a mountaintop. Like, that's...
Power of friendship.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
That's awesome. Life.
All right, cool. Let's, if anyone hasn't kind of explored my podcast much before, if this is your first time joining us, Jacob's first episode was called Undercover Boss, in which we talked about actually it was one of your Doctor Who games, with the one that was a blast, and then many months after that, Jacob wrote and ran a fantastic Call of Cthulhu one shot for myself and two of my other past guests. So I highly recommend you check it out. The first episode is up. The second episode comes out. If you're listening to this live, it comes out tomorrow. Second part, it's a 3-parter. I made it a 3-parter for ease of the listener. But what was that like? I don't want to do too much without spoiling anything, but like we were in, this Western theme. How do you go about? What was your like strategy for writing for this? Because you asked us like what the genre you wanted to be, and we all kind of, some less enthusiastic, but more, we all agreed on Western. So you went for Western themes. So it was like when you're writing a Call of Cthulhu, like I don't even know like what's the process behind that.
Yeah, so I mean obviously this depends on the kind of like GM or keeper you are.
Yeah.
I'm very improv heavy. I lean that way 100%. So what I did is I went through, and I really like doing like surveys and stuff as a starting point. Is that, like, that's not an accident that I made it like so you could vote on it and pick that way.
Yeah,
let me know what you wanted to do. That kind of what the backup stuff that was selected kind of gives me like eyes into the parts of what interest you. From there, with Call of Cthulhu, I generally pick kind of like this might this might upset some keepers, but I don't think Call of Cthulhu's all that good at handling like true monsters. Mm-hmm. Like if you run into Cthulhu while playing Call of Cthulhu, something went wrong, you all died, like it's over. I think Call of Cthulhu works best like ethereally, like atmospherically, I think is where it really shines.
Yeah.
So what I did is I had planned out a couple of scares throughout it of these are all clues that build to this grand idea, and these are the things that you'll experience and be relating with. So I knew, I believe in the first episode, I guess not too, I don't think it's a little bit of spoiler, but there's like a monolith-like thing that you guys see that's very much, I knew pretty early on that's one of the visuals, that was going to be something you could see. There's tape mentioned in the first episode, and I knew that was going to be something that you would see.
Yes.
I really like the idea of floating accents, which is kind of a weakness of me as a GM anyway, but I've always thought it really funny and kind of fundamentally be a really disturbing thing if you were talking to somebody and their accent just flipped on you.
Yes.
So talking that like disorientation and that sense of like lost, that I think the game really does a good job of expressing.
There's a lot in there also that while I was playing, I did not realize. And upon editing it and listening to it about 4 to 5 times, I picked up on all these nuances that you did, that there were weirder hints that we just kind of, as players, and I feel like as a person, you would have just you're like, that was kind of weird, but I'll just brush over that. But they were actually clues, and some of them we picked up on, others we didn't, and other ones were much more subtle. And I was really impressed with the writing the work you put into it. It was so awesome.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. A lot of times, and I recommend this a lot with Call of Cthulhu, really any mystery game, but Call of Cthulhu especially is good about this, is have like your general thesis thing that you're like, this is the thing that is scary. Right. Have a sense of what that is, and then build a huge web of possible clues, or just be freewheel the possibilities of what a clue can look like in the situation. I know I want this thing to be, I know this is what I want to be scary, so these are like 6 versions of the same clue or whatever, and just kind of drop them in various ways, and something's gonna be the thing that you latch onto. I know when it was happening, I didn't expect you to go down to the cattle farm. Like, I had no expectations. Talking to the sheriff, zero idea that you would talk to the sheriff.
Right.
I didn't plan on that. I didn't think about that. I had honestly expected to be a lot more claustrophobic, and you all just drifted immediately. We're like, well, we got to go talk to this person. And got to go all the way over here. We were just going to
try and like keep talking to the people in the bar kind of more, and just...
I had kind of imagined, that you would kind of keep being pinned further and further into the space, is what I had kind of conceived of it as. But that's the benefit of being very like improv heavy with it, is I get that free flowing. I get to like, oh, you guys want to get out of here? Okay, cool. We gotta get out of here. I gotta come up with immediately what this all looks like, where we're going, what the plan is. And that's the most fun part, is having built something just well enough where you can do whatever you want with it, and I can change accordingly.
I mean, it definitely worked, because you did all these kind of random things. So like essentially the sheriff NPC, like you didn't even really have him in mind. You just kind of like winged it.
Yeah, no, I had no sense of what the sheriff NPC was going to be. In the least spoilery way possible, there's a thing with like, I had expected like a fight to break out at some point.
Right.
And so I knew that like there were like, I had one of the first, like out of like, I had like 5 things fully planned, and one of them was like paper dolls. Which I'll say it like that. That way it doesn't really spoil anything. I've always visually thought that was very creepy. I had zero concept of how you were going to introduce them, how I was going to introduce them. I just knew that was something that was scary, and that was something that there's no way with the characters you built, you won't at some point get into a fight. So trying to find the way of building it, like building it something that I can plug and chug where I need it to be. It's almost like reverse Mad-libbing. Like picking your nouns and verbs, and then while you guys write the sentences, I plug the noun and verb that I know will fit here.
Yeah, and I mean, it was so great. It was nice. Fun to work on too, because again, probably should have released all the episodes and then had this conversation. But on the next time you return, we'll finish it out or something. But working on it and adding the music to add the after I listened to it a couple times and I saw like the idea and the motives and the like kind of what you were going for. It was one of my favorite parts was being able to put the music, and I used the music to also re-solidify the things that you did, like certain events that ended up kind of recurring. I used similar, I really like, once I saw your vision, I was like, oh, I can mess with this and have a good time. So while it was a lot of work, it was fun. The music was definitely a really cool part.
You put a lot of work into it, and it shows. It's really good. And I was not using the quality mic that I'm using now. So and this is not that great a mic to begin with, and it was much worse. What you're able to turn it into is very, very impressive. I'm really proud of it. It was
I got no one to thank.
The first thing I DM'd in like a public setting like that. Like I'd done like professional games, but I hadn't really performed D&D.
Right.
Like that.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That was the thing that made me confident enough to try the other stuff.
Yeah, it was your first time like doing it live and recording, and which was crazy because we just threw you in there, but yeah, you crushed it for sure.
Thanks.
We all had a great time, and that's kind of like most important. Have you done any other like Call of Cthulhu games that really stand out while we're on the topic of Call of Cthulhu? Because that's another one that I just loved. I had so much fun with that.
I love Call of Cthulhu. Call of Cthulhu is I finished a campaign of Call of Cthulhu. I think just a little bit after that. It was like 24 sessions, 2 flashback sessions. One that was one that took place kind of like 1740s, and one that took place I want to say 1920s. That was a lot of fun. Ended up using like the Dreamlands, and I got to go very surreal with it by the end, which was a lot of fun. And I just ran a one shot that kind of this is going to sound super kind of like I wanted to try to deconstruct the history of New York. So they work their way through at one point through like a subway cart, and as they work their way further in, there's like pennies begin falling down as though it's the pennies that supposedly could fall off the Empire State Building, kill people. So they're projectiles like falling down as they're working their way through and finding like somebody skating on metal and that horrible screeching sound while she's just fluidly moving and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I really love doing the atmospheric stuff with the game. So moments like that are when I think of like, oh, that's the stuff I'm most proud of with Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, there's those moments where you're just like, what? And like, that's like, I think it's cool how kind of way out of left field because of the lore, because of like what Cthulhu, I guess, essentially does is the madness that starts to ensue.
Yeah.
And your inability to tell the difference, and then its ability to actually inflict harm on you, puts like such a wild spin on the tabletop games, because like you're so helpless sometimes, like, you know, it's just certain situations, and then like to do it on a long-term campaign seems maddening to me, like how I'm sure there's an overarching story. Is it kind of work like almost, because like I always think when I think Doctor Who, I think a series of episodes with one overarching theme that starts to piece itself together towards the end. Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah, kind of. Call of Cthulhu, the trick... So there are, like, campaigns that are built that have, like, you know, you can run, like, Nyarlathotep, which is, like, an amazing, amazing campaign, or Horror in the Orient Express, that's another amazing one.
Oh, yeah.
But if you're doing, like, a home game... the trick I always use, or that I used for this, was if you're going to have people stuck together in Call of Cthulhu, you need to give a reason why you ever bothered being here. Because after the first adventure, why are you going back after these things? There's no good reason to be here.
Like, oh, I'm going to leave you all behind, check myself into a mental institution, and never turn back.
Yeah, I saw these horrible nightmares. You're not just going back to work the next day.
Right.
I killed the evil Wendigo Santa, like which was the first session of the game, was Wendigo Santa Claus. And trying to immediately having them being like investigated by the police, so they get slowly forced as evidence mounts against them, so they get caught in this conspiracy if they were involved, but they have to disprove themselves. And it kind of just kept going from there. As with a lot of Lovecraft stuff, I like the idea that you are the consequences of agreeing to be in the room with this thing. You are approving of it the moment you say, I am okay standing here next to you. It doesn't, anything, even just agreeing to walk in the room is almost like it's a Faustian bargain from the very get-go.
Right. So
just having that consistently escalating as it's, how are you guilty? How are you culpable in this? And allowing them to keep burying themselves along the way. The further they want to go with it, by the end of the game, they had like ended the world, because there was no other route you could possibly kind of take that game other than they just brought upon this like glass-like being and brought him onto the world, and he had conquered everything.
That's cool. I dig it.
Yeah. So it's fun. It's a very depressing way to end that.
Yeah. No, it's fine. It's like part of the game. It's such an interesting way to play, just like that. But it does make sense that you really need to figure out what's the hook that's going to keep this party together, you know, as best you can. You know, it's easy.
Especially...
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, especially with Call of Cthulhu. Like, Call of Cthulhu is, I think, is one of the hardest games to do it with, because D&D, you just throw a monster in front of a group of people, they fight it together, they go, oh, we're friends now, and we're going to fight together from now on. And you've basically built a party. Like, that's all you need to do.
It's usually like Cthulhu, one or two events that, like, lead them together and bring it all together, and they're normally adventurers. That's what adventurers do. They adventure, they party up with fellow adventurers and they go on adventures. And they're also they're expecting most of the time, expecting danger and trouble. But with Call of Cthulhu, you're just going about your day. And
you're just normal people.
Yeah.
So and I mean, you even have that issue to a certain degree with like the one shot that I did with you guys.
Right.
Where the question was like, how do I get you three disparate people to kind of come together? Because there's no good reason really outside of like casual conversation for you three, let alone to be on an adventure. And it really is just in that allowing people to identify weird things kind of pushes people together. As soon as you see something and somebody else sees it too, there's this instant kind of gelling that happens where it's like, it doesn't really matter. We don't have that much in common. What matters is that we have this in common, and then kind of propel and get that momentum. So it's not weird that you all are hanging out. It's not weird you're going out together.
Yeah. And again, with, pretty much no to minimal spoilers, it was like, it was kind of a weird thing. Why don't you two, I'll stay here at my bar, you two just go talk to the sheriff, see what's going on. And then that kind of, upon that trip is where I believe at least one of them saw that the monolith. I ended up not seeing it until way later. It was like,
yeah,
it might not even be in part 2, or it might have been at the end of part 1. It was something. So like, the fact that, but I mean, it was still, I think it kind of worked in our favor because this was my hometown, which gives me a reason. I had a reason to be there. I worked there. It was my bar. The two of them connected over that site that they saw and the issues that followed. So yeah, it really did kind of work out. Cause I think about that sometimes even in D&D where like something will happen. I'm like, my character would leave. He would leave. Like, it's just like, no, he'd be like, no, I'm out. I mean, like it takes a bit more typically. Like, retiring your character. Either just the party just is completely mistreating your character because that's who they are as characters. And you're like, I wouldn't stick around. So I know my character would be like, fuck these people, and just like,
oh yeah. It's so hard to find like a good reason for everybody to be together.
Yeah.
Unless you kind of want to just avoid it. And it is the classic, just you're all at a tavern, you've been hired by this man, good luck.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I've seen people call it like cheap or lazy, but I think it's honestly just efficient. Yeah. There's something truly great, like Critical Role Season 2 starts with them all meeting in a tavern, and there's a reason why, because it works.
Almost always starts in a bar.
Yeah, it's a good way to start a game.
No, it definitely is. We did have someone up. It's me, Dum Dum. Says wonderful beards to us. So.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Both a bunch of ginger beards over here. Thank you. It's me, Dum. Welcome to You Had to Be There. We talk tabletop role playing game, fun stories. Definitely hit that subscribe or whatever it is on Twitch. Follow. You don't have to subscribe or anything. There's always a million things, but that's great. Love Call of Cthulhu. And now you have your other project, your newer project, which I believe you mentioned on your first episode that you wrote for the Cheesy Gordita Bunch podcast. And now why don't you kind of explain kind of where that's taken you now? You kind of got to mix the two together.
Yeah, so I wrote for them like bits and pieces here and there, like interview questions for some bits and just like some joke stuff. They had an episode where the ghost of Glenn Bell was on, and I wrote that. I wrote a good portion of that. I was actually recently on it as a robot, which was just a lot of fun. But I ended up after the Call of Cthulhu one shot, I ended up doing a like Thanksgiving, like a Friendsgiving kind of one shot for them. That was super fun. It got a surprising number of listens.
Nice. Send me that. I want to listen to that.
Yeah. Oh, it's and it was people. It was like just got like a lot of good response. And me and Nick, who's a good friend of mine, who's one of the hosts on the show, we started talking about like, well, we should do this as a show. We can do this. Would be worth it. I spent somewhere around with my good friend Alex Mendez about 4 months building out the universe. Because it's easy to do a Taco Bell one shot. It's very hard to build a worthwhile universe.
Yeah.
So having like a full continent of stuff is just a pain. It is very difficult.
When you envision, because it's called In the Land of Cheese and Sauce.
Yeah.
And it is a Taco Bell based 5e, I guess essentially 5e. I know it's pretty heavily homebrewed, but
I just built subclasses. Like it's pretty much.
Yeah. So it's mostly
like
5e. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't change the mechanics. I just
Okay.
I truly just added some.
So what was that?
Subclasses.
What was the world building like for the land of cheese and sauce?
I take stuff like that too seriously, is the honest to God answer. So I basically went through and I was just like, well, like I structurally broke down like what is Taco Bell to me? What are the themes I'd want to explore? And then how much research do I need to do so I can understand that? So I read through about like food history, the colonization of flavor, and I read this amazing book on the history of sugar and the history of cooking, trying to figure out how to build this up. Because I think the most interesting thing about like Taco Bell is that from a narrative perspective at the very least, is Glenn Bell's weird confidence he had in himself about his innovation to tacos. An actual quote of his is, "I didn't invent the taco, but I absolutely improved it."
Wow.
And the confidence that takes.
Yeah, that's a heavy debate. I don't know. Maybe when he first made that taco, and he was like, "This is an improve on the taco," but then after the mass production and the franchises, I don't know.
No, I mean, he was with it from the beginning. I got no good defense of it, but I love the confidence of that and the idea of like bold. Stealing the foods. And I got really interested in the idea of like the origins of like haute cuisine, because in the way that like seasonings were kind of became discriminated against after they became easily accessible, and that's where haute cuisine came in, was to make fancy foods with less spices, because that was the harder thing to do. If anybody had spices, we have to make this food as fancy and master one flavor instead of trying to mix and match stuff.
Okay.
So I found this like class element really exciting. So I took all of that with Alex, and I took all of the things we were interested in, because we knew we wanted it to be steampunk, and we knew that we wanted it to be steampunk. We wanted it to be Texas themed. So kind of taking all of that and mixing it together. And we made a way too thorough of a world. We have multi-page documents just breaking down like world government structures. So we're just like, we know exactly like the style of government and the different parties in the government and all this kind of stuff. It got really elaborate. We spent multiple like regularly meeting to try to make it happen. I'm really happy with what we made.
Yeah, it's great, and like the episodes are fun. If you kind of want to, I don't know if you want to give a brief overview on kind of what's been happening to try and hook people in, or kind of the dealio.
Yeah, I mean the game follows these two disparate parts: the Bibliomarines, who are effectively book marines who on the oil sea, which is like the Underdark Ocean, made up of actual oil. And two people from the capital of the Gus's Imperium, this big colonial power in the world. They've kind of been forced to work together and are getting slowly involved in a conspiracy with the Bibliomarines, as people have been going missing. They just recently got through a large sentient coral cave. Mm-hmm. And they are right now heading back to the Dwelf part of town, which I'm very excited about. For those listeners who don't know, a Dwelf is my favorite thing from 3.5 that they did not bring back yet. A Dwelf is a half-dwarf, half-elf. The worst of both worlds. They're amazing. Every drawing of them makes them look terrifying and awful. I love them. They're horrible. I actually made a full homebrew. I made 3 homebrew races for the game. Dwelves were one of them, and I cannot say how sad I was that none of my players picked that one.
Oh, well.
It really hurt. It really hurt.
If you do another one shot, I'll play a Dwelf for you.
I appreciate it.
Crazy little Dwelf. That hates Taco Bell or something. I don't know.
I love the idea of them so much. They're such a horrible concept and a horrible execution. And it's just so wonderful.
Yeah, it is kind of weird how in the D&D world they're just like only, what is it? Just orcs and elves are the only ones that can seem to successfully breed with humans, right? Isn't that the thing? Or
I mean they just like they just
weird.
They don't really have like a good mechanical reason for it. They're just kind of like things don't work out. But in like older editions you could play as as dwarves, and they were I loved these just like almost mad science-y kind of a very Junkrat from Overwatch, if you played that game at all.
I
Very
haven't
much
played
that.
Overwatch, but I can picture it though, because they're probably like intelligent but gritty. It's like kind of like this weird if combination, because you think of elves and you think of like poise and intelligence and that kind, and then you think of dwarves and they're just like, just drink beer and hit stuff with axes. So it's like a very weird like mix, and I'm sure it's flexible, but that would definitely I think that would be like super smart but like really dumb also. Like I don't know, probably high intelligence, low wisdom or something, I don't know, but that's a lot of fun. And yeah, and the choral, I listened to, I'm up to all those the choral episodes. We had a little bit of a heart wrencher in the choral. The incident that occurred and someone's RIP.
Well, it was a sad moment.
Yeah.
I was stuff like that. I always really liked the DM because it's great. Seeing all of the player investment as that moment happens, you could see the players actually getting emotional.
Yeah.
And it's really wonderful that we're only maybe 4 or 5 sessions in at that point.
Yeah.
So really easy to get into, but having them be able to having the players already be that invested in the world and their characters, that this is like an emotional moment for them, was really sweet.
That part hooked me, like, for sure. I mean, I was listening and stuff, and I was listening, but like, yeah, you feel that when an unexpected moment happens, and you're just like, and then I forgot his name, but whoever plays the Jean, what is it?
John Paul Pierre. John Paul Pierre Martin.
Yeah, it's great, and like the
that's my friend TW. He's amazing.
The dialogue that followed after the incident, like, really was like, I was like, oh, I feel for you, bro. Get in there. Yeah, it was.
I love it. We had this really we had talked about his character, and I just love this idea is that we were obsessed with the way we kind of joked about how white authors are really bad about naming characters from anywhere in the world. Like, like the Cho Chang thing, where it's just 2 last names lined up.
Right.
And or two so we were like, what with John Paul Pierre Martin, we were just like, how many French first names can we put in a row and have it sound like a real French name?
It does.
So we just started we just started sliding French names around until we found John Paul Pierre Martin, and it just sounds it tracks. It sounds right.
Crazy French. No. That was fun. Nice. What level are you guys up to now in that? You just rolled.
We started at
stats, right?
I believe we started at 5th.
You started at 5th. Okay.
Yeah. Everybody's fairly experienced, and the first couple levels are always so like wonky. I knew I didn't want to start at 3rd.
Yeah.
And 5th gave them because it was homebrew subclass as well. I homebrewed all of the subclasses, which you can find on the Cheesy Gordita Bunch website. I wanted to get them high enough where they could actually show off their abilities as well, that it wouldn't just be like the first one, because a lot of these abilities very feed into each other, and having everybody make sure they're kind of on the same page there was be a really nice thing. So
yeah, it gets that's like, honestly, the first I'm as far as like classes go, I only really look at what they got for like 3rd and 6th level, and then after that I'm like, I'm not getting, I don't play enough. Like, I'm never going to get to level 50. I don't care about that ability that you get at level 15. Most likely, I'm not going to get to it. 1, because scheduling sucks. And 2, like, you just, I don't know. You're not, like, what? You go to, like, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, maybe. But, like, that's why I've been getting more into multi-classing. I was like, you know what? I'm not going above certain levels. I get way better, way more stuff. Like, level 1 and 2 in other classes. Start mixing 2 or 3 classes, you get some sick shit, you can really work it out. So like, but yeah, as long as the 3rd level abilities are dope. What are some of the examples? Because like, I guess I'm listening, but like, it's hard to pick up exactly what abilities are there. So like, what was one or two examples of some of those subclass abilities?
I'm trying to think. I know the bard has ability I'm really happy with, where the bard can actually take negatives to their upcoming rolls to provide those as benefits for other players.
Oh, that's
so they can actually help out people by taking negatives to themselves. So they're able to, and I believe they also, at the level they're at, can if they give someone the bardic inspiration die, that person can use the help action as a bonus action when they use it.
Oh.
So they can use that at range. So you can start passing helps around. And I read because the whole idea was the college of corporate synergy. So having you being able to synergize with the players.
That's so funny.
I don't think I don't think anyone took it, but the monk has one of my favorite abilities, where you at the beginning of combat you pick either up or down. I believe it's Path of the Combo is what I called it.
Okay.
You pick up or down, and you can roll you can roll your martial arts die, and you can choose to either add that to a player's initiative after initiative's been rolled, or lower a player's initiative after initiative's been rolled, and you get a secondary ability depending on which one you did. If it lowers it, I believe your movement speed increases. If it increases it, I think you can take you can take an attack by spending a key point at the end of their turn.
Oh, all right.
I think it's what it was. And I've always loved being able to control the initiative. I like being able to manipulate it. I think it's a really fun mechanic that 5e doesn't really have much of. So being able to try to add in a couple of things like that I really enjoy.
And can you do that negating of initiative to like an enemy though too?
I'm pretty sure it has to be an ally.
It has to be an
ally.
ally.
The idea is that you are controlling the order in which your allies go. So you can, if your cleric rolls too high, well, now you can bump that cleric back to where they need to be in initiative so they can heal up after damage.
Right.
If you want to confirm your fighter goes up a little earlier, you can throw it there.
That's cool. Yeah, interesting. It must be like a weird role-playing thing too. I'm like trying to visualize how you would narrate that, but yeah, that's bummed that no one took the monk.
Yeah, I'm trying to think which other ones. I built a suicide bombing subclass, which no one took because it's very basically okay. So you know how everybody says rangers rangers. Everyone says rangers suck, which they're wrong. But everybody says rangers suck, and their animals especially are like the worst part about them.
Sure.
So what I basically did is I built this thing where it's where you get to summon mephits depending on your environment. And that every time that you weigh, because mephits explode when they die, the way they should work is the way I built it is that they keep getting stronger every time they die to a point where they become actually unbeneficial because they're too strong.
Gotcha.
So until you take a short rest. So you keep throwing them into battle and having to balance when you summon them and when you send them out. So you gotta just keep summoning up more mephits and using them in combat. Because people said they weren't strong enough. The rangers aren't strong enough, so I was like, I'm gonna make their companion a little bit too strong. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna find a way to make it so they're strong enough where it's inconvenient.
I don't get it. Like we're in a campaign, guy plays a ranger, and he puts out tons of damage.
Yeah,
puts out tons of damage. He's got pass without a trace. He's got marks, and you just have to find the right subclass for you. You know, a lot of these subclasses, even like some of them in the player's handbooks, like. If an enemy is adjacent, like you can make another attack, and that's at like level 3. Like that's 2 attacks that you would not have been able to do. And it's like, then what? Level 5? Then you get 3 attacks. Like I think people just mistake because like the rogue is all one hit, tons of damage, but like you can't forget about just pure output. You know, like if you're stacking multiple attacks with multiple spells that buff your things, like you can really put out some damage and. It's a weird one. And then they also have support and utility, and like they're like a Swiss Army knife kind of. So
I think people I think it's like a min-maxing thing where like I maybe you can do the math and there's like a better class that can do more damage or do more heals on their own, but like rangers are fun as hell. Yeah, like they're a fun subclass. They're a fun class. Their subclasses are super fun and really thematic.
Yeah, like
I am sorry you're missing out on 10 points of damage, but they're still way more fun than playing the fighter.
Guess what? If you get lost,
you know. Yeah, you can. If you take the right one, you can never get lost. Like that's amazing. That's such a useful ability.
There's so many abilities. Yeah, and having, secondary. I mean,
they can passively just get food, which is a crazy useful ability. Like that they can just at any point in time just go off into the woods as long as they're in their preferred territory, just go off and they come back and it's like, I got all the food we need. We don't need any rations.
You know what you gotta do? People, if you complain, and if you're playing with someone that says rangers suck, just put them in a bunch of survival situations and be like, how's your food looking? And they're like, what? We have to keep track of that? And I'm like, yeah, I bet you wish you had a ranger now. Who's gonna find this food? Oh, the wizard? The wizard's gonna go find the food for you?
Good luck. Good luck.
Yeah, good luck.
Hope he rolls high.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I never understood that, but nice. So yeah, I love all those subclasses. That sounds so fun.
Thanks.
I might have to check that out too on the Cheesy Gordita bunch. Do you have any other, like, other than just your regular crushing games every week, any other like projects in the works you're working on?
Yeah, we me and a bunch of some of the people from in the land of cheese and sauce, as well as a couple other really awesome Austin comics, are putting together a sketch show, like a sketch radio show. Nice. I just finished the scripts a couple weeks ago. We should have first recordings done for like in the next week or two, and hopefully have episodes out before the end of the year. So I'm really excited about that. Trying to think of I think that's like the big thing. Everything else is so like I don't want to pitch. I always never want to be the person who's just like, I'm writing this thing. You know?
I'm working on it.
Yeah. Working on the same project for 3 years, so I guess it kind of counts, but not really.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the biggest thing coming down the pipeline, and I'm very excited about that. And I've got another podcast that should be starting up. I'm moving to Austin soon, so once I get out there, I'll have another project.
Nice.
Hopefully ready to go in a couple weeks.
I have to go to, I mean, I haven't been there. The comedy scene is like really crazy down there now, apparently, but it's also, when that happens, everyone and their mother goes there to be a stand-up comedian. So if going there with no one to know is like just walking into a dust storm. Like there's nothing there. So, but if I have some friends down there, I think I know one or two other people down there. I gotta make my way down to Austin at some point.
A bunch of my friends live down there. Like half the cast of the show are on there. So it's a very easy jumping in point for me, and a lot of them are comics. I don't think I'm ever going to go back to stand-up because I can't physically put myself through that anymore.
It's tough.
I can still eat Taco Bell, so I can't do stand-up. Like that's my body's trade-off, is I have to pick one toxic thing, and I'm picking Taco Bell.
Okay. Well, my body chose for me then. They said no more Taco Bell unless you're drunk, and yeah.
But yeah, so I'm gonna try to keep doing like sketch and that kind of stuff.
Sketch is cool. I've never done sketch stuff, but I think it's fun. I mean, well, it's kind of hard to say I don't, because I do sketch stuff now, kind of almost, or improv. You know, that's what D&D is. It's improv most of the time. But it also, I guess, based on who you are as a person. Like if you're not into it, there's the strong silent type that will just kill things, and that's okay too. Yeah.
Yeah,
cool.
Doing all these games where because I run somewhere in like 40 hours a week of games. Like it's like a full time. It is fundamentally a full time job. And I can feel I've gotten a lot better at just improv because I have to quickly make choices. And anytime they do a shopping session, it effectively turns into a rotating of like, what choice can I make quickly? Because I am not the kind of GM who has bullet points of like, this is all the shops in the city. They're rolling a D8. This is the shopkeeper's name. This is what they do. Like, I got no idea until you say, oh, I want to go get armor. It's like, okay, so there's an armor. It makes sense to be an armor. The city would have to have this kind of thing. And having to do all that like in a split second has really sped things up for me.
Do you, are most of your games, do you find, is it skewed more in the experienced player direction or the newer player direction?
It's probably, if it's D&D, it be new player, although some of those games have run now long enough where they can, where it started as new player
when they started,
to say that they aren't new players anymore. Where I feel comfortable, like where a couple of the games have gone on for a year now, so they can confidently say like, we are not new players anymore. Right. And then from there, almost all of the indie games I run, like 0% of people who are going to sign up for Duckborg or my Teens in Space game have played either of the systems. I ran Glitter Hearts a while back, which is amazing. I love it. Highly recommend it. It's a Magic Girl game. Please play it. But
well, hold on. So when you say, all right, so they're new to that game, but have they played other games before? Or do you find...
Yeah, a lot of times those players, the people playing in like indie games, a lot of times have played... It's interesting because what I personally found is that the people who play like indie games oftentimes have played a wider variety of games, but have played for about the same amount of time as someone who's just started playing D&D. So it'll be someone who's played only D&D, but played like 5 sessions of it. Right. Or it'll be someone who's played like 3 different Powered by the Apocalypse games, about the same number of sessions.
Gotcha. That's good. I mean, I just think it kind of makes sense because if you're like, oh, I want to try tabletop games, like, or I always wanted to play. Most people don't even know there's other things. You know, there's other forms of tabletop games. They just think, you know, D&D is D&D, and that's it. So I can imagine that very few brand new spanking people are like, I'm gonna go play, what's the other one you run, like Bubblegum Shoe or whatever, just like
amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, that's always the hardest part of like convincing people it's worthwhile to play the games. It's one of the nicest things. Yeah, and it's the nice thing is like I'm just under like 100 reviews. I'm at like 97 or something like that. I'm like number 6 on the website or something. So it's this really nice thing where people trust me. They shouldn't. I'm a lunatic, but they do. So it's like a really nice benefit of like people will kind of go along with like what is this gay game in space? Like what it's queer in space. Like what does that mean? And have people be trusting me and signing up for that. Or having like that trust of like this weird grindhouse game is going to be a fun experience.
Right.
It's nice now having people who are like, this looks like fun, maybe. Like I don't know, but I'll give you a shot.
Yeah, I mean the reviews are good. I'm sure that's crucial when people are looking for those. I mean, I don't even know how you find out about sites like Start Playing, and I don't know what kind of advertising they do, but I can imagine like if I was to go on there and be like, oh, I can hire someone to do this, and I click on a face, like I'm gonna want to see what people say, and it's so. If I get the chance to finally hop on a session with you, I'll leave you a stellar review. I promise.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. And anyone else should too. If they do it, you should leave good reviews, because most of the times people that leave reviews are terrible, and they leave the meanest reviews because you forgot their chopsticks or something, and 9 times out of 10, it's over exaggerated. So leave good reviews. Even on the
reviews on the shows you listen to too. Like, it's one of those things where I will admit 100% I was the asshole who listened to a bunch of shit and then never reviewed it. And it was only after starting my show I was like, oh wow, this makes a difference. I didn't even
realize, like I was so oblivious. I didn't even know Spotify you could leave ratings. I would just cruise through all the time, and then I was like, oh, so yeah, if you like something, show it and share it. I feel like people don't do enough of that too. It's like, and it's not like, but I mean, even people that don't create or anything, just like, hey, if you find something that someone likes, share that, send it out there, and just be like, I've been listening to it, you should too. Before we get you out of here, I do always, and in true fashion, I would love to hear any of your favorite kind of stories, moments that have happened over the past year, really, since we last spoke. Other than like kind of what we throw in the Discord chat occasionally, but
oh, absolutely,
probably have so many in the brains. But anything that sticks out, anything wild that happened recently?
Yeah, most recently, I was in LA, so I wasn't able to put any of the stories up. So this will be new for 100% new. I run a game on Saturday mornings that is like set in Wildemount. This big dramatic game. Their players are super into it. They take it very seriously, and it makes the game amazing. The more serious your players take it, the more serious you could take it, and it really makes everything a lot of fun. One of the PCs just died, and one of the other PCs had a huge friendship with that character. They had really built this relationship, and with his death, it sent him into a spiral. He went to a character whose name was, what was it? It was Surrett Hoslaughter or it was manslaughter backwards was all that really matters for the sake of this.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's truly impossible to pronounce. Who they had met before was clearly a demon and was willing to make a deal to go to this other plane exclusively to bring back this character who everybody above table, including that player, knows doesn't want to come back as that player, as that character.
So funny.
So now they've been dragged all across the plains just to this one spot in the vain hopes that they can find this thing and then talk to somebody they know is going to say no.
They're like, and no, I don't want to go back. And they're like, but we rescued you. We're here.
We just did all this effort. I'm so excited for whatever pan out of that is. And they let me do my favorite trope, which is a very, very kind badass.
Okay.
I love very sweet, like, because they went to this like good heaven. The guy was a good guy. He ended up in like one of the good heavens you can end up in. And so just having this little halfling who's just like, yeah, guys, I'm going to kick your ass. As he's just like stretching. Just give me 1 second. Feel free. You guys make sure you stretch your hammies. You don't want to get injured. As he's just getting ready to just whoop some ass.
Yeah, that's fun. I like unassuming, dangerous characters. That one's a little more confident, but I played he was like a 14-year-old halfling, but he was a wild magic sorcerer, so he's just like this little unassuming boy, and his arcane focus was a ball in a cup that he had. It was like his toy, but he didn't realize that he formed like a special connection with it. So like, just like crazy stuff, like
awesome.
Yeah, so like, witch bolt would like shoot out of this ball in a cup while he was like shaking. He was like, I don't know what's happening, and then I always. Every round that I had the chance did the wild magic advantage, so that way the DM would just roll on the table, and like I was getting like 5th level magic missiles. I was getting like levitate, like I was getting the best stuff. Like it never really like did anything bad to me, so I was just getting so brave with it. We haven't played that series in a while. It was like our backup for a bit, but it was like so fun to just like have this little boy that was like just blowing stuff up left and right.
I have
yes, one of my games Nicole's watching the stream right now. Oliver we had another my other friend was playing a dwarf who I think he like worked in the like did a lot of, he was a ranger, but he was in the Underdark for like years. Yeah. So he was like crazy, and he just decided that that I was his son, even though I was clearly a halfling and he was clearly a dwarf. And like it was just
wonderful.
He just was like, "You're my," like he's just like, "Oh, my boy over there," and I'm like, "I'm not." And he's like, but it got dangerous because he was like, "You can see in the dark." I'm like, "No, I can't." And I was like, "I can't see in the dark. I'm not a dwarf." Like, yeah, it was fun. Any other good ones like before we get out of here?
I'm trying to think. Honestly, the Pokemon game is the one that probably gets the craziest.
Yeah, tell me about that
one. They accidentally murdered a mountain in that game.
A whole mountain?
So there was like a series of like Team Rocket or whatever, I think it was Team Galactic maybe, was like doing experiments on top of a mountain to try to reach out to one of the legendary Pokemon, right? Like very anime-y kind of thing.
Sure.
And they were like, well, we'll have Zubat use Confuse Ray on him, and he'll confuse the scientist, and then, the machine will go wrong and everything goes fine. They successfully did it to such a point where the machine ended up exploding, and they got lucky and survived it, but effectively everything else from like a mile down the mountain was wiped out. Oh. So they just came back, and just having to be like, oh, everything's empty. Huh. Like just now Confuse Ray is considered the most dangerous attack in the entire game because
they just confuse the scientist.
They just confused the wrong person at the person with the Hadron Collider, and now everything got shot to shit.
So did you roll to see like which person would get confused, or they just
they targeted the person? They did that. I rolled to see if they could avoid it, and then when they didn't, I like kind of random charts to a certain degree of just seeing like how bad is this disaster going to get? Yeah. And he like crit failed, and like the disaster crit failed, like all this stuff kept going wrong. So I was like, okay,
this is bad. That's so funny. I'm like, whoops.
Yeah, that game is they can get up to some anime style nonsense, which is just no player should be allowed that kind of power. No player should be allowed that kind of power.
Last question about the Pokemon one before we get you. So when it comes to stats, does your character have stats, or is it mostly just based on what Pokemon you have?
Oh, it's both.
It's both. Yeah.
The kind people who made this game are dedicated. So you have your character stats, and then you have stats for every Pokemon. And there is a list of every Pokemon up until the most recent game. And I mean the one that hasn't come out yet in there. And you can do any of the Pokemon in there. You know how to generate them. You can go through and build out their stats, level them, all that kind of good stuff.
And then do they find them like in the wild and stuff too? And
yeah. Anytime they go out, I have them. I use the actual video game charts to a certain degree, and we'll have them roll on like the random charts, see what will pop up, what do they run into in this area,
right.
To see,
based on region too. I'm sure, like imagine.
Yeah. So they're in a specific region, a specific route. Yeah. I'm literally like have like if they're walking up route whatever in Kanto, then like I'll roll and be like, oh, the options are like Rattata, coughing, whatever, roll, and then they have like an encounter with that, or if they roll outside of it, more social encounter, trying to build it all like that. I want it to feel like the TV show. So you have to have like Pokemon just doing things and people just randomly going out. They spent one session turned into a horror session as they were being haunted by a ghost Pokemon. And it was them trying to figure out what Pokemon was haunting them and why were these scary things happening and all this kind of stuff.
Do you let them have like, out the gate, they have a couple? Is it based on like their level? Like obviously you don't give someone like, a Moltres or whatever. Like how do you adjust that of like, well, I guess the same thing with like the tables of what Pokemon they can and can't have at that time?
I'm not that restrictive with it. In regards to the game, if you start at the very beginning of the game, I do it very, very video game-esque, where you get one starter Pokemon.
That makes sense.
They do tell you like the recommended like a difficult like recommended level of getting the Pokemon in there, which is really nice. So I'm just like, pick one of these if you want to pick, and there's a huge list, like there's tons of Pokemon that all have like the same basic beginner stats. So you can pick from a massive range, and if you're super specific that you really want, Dratini or whatever, like it's not going to make that big a difference to me. It's really not going to break the game. People are going to catch more Pokemon. People are going to have Pokemon other people don't have. Like you're naturally going to balance out your team. I'm not stressing it too much. People who join now after a couple months, they generally start with 2 to 3 Pokemon. And then from there, they'll catch more relatively quickly. I even had them stop by like a Pokemon like shelter where like Pokemon that had been people's but had been like abandoned were at, so that they could like take very like a dog shelter or something like that. It was a no-kill shelter, and they had to try to take care of them as easily.
I know so many people that'd be like, I'll take them all. I'll just take them all. Get in here. That's awesome. Awesome, man.
It's all fun.
This was great as always. Tell everyone where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find my games and start playing games/jackweasel, JACWEASEL. And if you want to check out In the Land of Cheese Sauce, it's kind of wherever you listen to podcasts. I use Spotify, but if you have like Google Play or whatever, you can check it out wherever. It's I got a bunch of new games coming up, so please feel free to join. I got a lot of really fun ones.
Do you have a link tree?
Not for. I think I have a link tree for In the Land of Cheese and Sauce. I can give
you
to you,
do it
but
for
I
like
don't
everything.
have one for.
Yeah,
I
should do it for you, because I was gonna say like we'll drop those links. Do you have anything else though? I'm sorry I cut you off.
Oh no. If I have anything else, please join my duckboard game. More than anything else, I just want to run Grim Dark DuckTales. Please come and join that game.
All right, Grim Dark DuckTales. You heard it here, folks. Thank you, man. You're the best. Thanks everyone for listening. I know we have it's me, Dum Dum, Pyros869. Thanks for hanging out with us this whole time. If this is You Had to Be There. We talk fun D&D stories. You can find us either live here on Twitch, also audio version pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts, YouTube, etc. We also have a Discord. It's in the link tree, which is posted. So feel free to join that and chat with us about fun stuff. Thanks again. My name is Tom DeSillis. I'm the host. I'm a stand-up comedian. Follow me online. T DeSillis Comedy on Twitter is the best to find out when the show is going live. The audio for my intro was created by Michael James McGarry. You can follow him on It's MJ Made on Instagram or SoundCloud. And my logo was created by Nicole Summers, who's also hanging out in the chat. She is from the Reliably Chaotic Podcast. And that'll wrap up the show. Thanks, everybody. This has been You Had to Be There with Jacob Cordas.
Woo-woo.
Bye, y'all.